Hey everybody, welcome back to another production meeting. As you can see, it's just me and Ryan. So Alex is watching baseball. And good luck to him, I think. I hope. Um, how are you, Ryan? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm good. I've just been watching lots of Halloween movies and avoiding The Exorcist Believer to the best of my ability. But yeah,
Yeah, for all of you that like we weren't going to review that, Alex has an aversion to religious horror, and it's getting really bad reviews. So I didn't really want to waste our time with that. So this week we have a little something different. I know it's a little late for this, but um, since it's two Star Wars geeks and Alex is way behind in what's going on in the Star Wars universe, we've decided to talk a little Ahsoka season one review. Because there's really not any news. Do you have any news or anything? I've
not
been
really.
scouring through like Variety, and all I get is that Jason Momoa tried to get somebody fired.
I saw a lot of Aquaman news in the last day or two, but I feel like that's been the last month or two. It's just Aquaman news. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, David Gordon Green might not direct the next Exorcist. Who cares?
too bad.
Good, actually.
Um,
Um, I'm sure there'll be more
apparently,
news, but
apparently the documentary on Netflix is pretty good, I guess. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham around. I mean, if you're a fan of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there's a podcast, or I guess coming out that's reclaiming the entire like original cast, I guess.
hmm,
That's kind of interesting. I've listened to that.
I'm
I don't
scrolling through
know.
some recent news now, and one of the most exciting things on IMDb is that apparently Patrick Stewart said Paramount producers wanted him to wear a wig for his Star Trek audition. I'm like, wow, that is a slow news week if we're talking about Next
Right?
Generation.
Wow. Yeah,
Star
doesn't
Trek,
he have like
not
a
Star Wars.
Star Trek? Yeah.
Yeah, but
Um, yeah, I guess Slayer is a Buffyverse story. Apparently, Bismarck Carpenter is back. Anthony Head, Giles, Emma Caulfield is back. I don't remember Clem, but I guess he's back. And Danny Strong is back. It does not say if, well, Joss Whedon is not a part of this, so that's a good thing. Amber Benson is back. But it doesn't say if Sarah Michelle Gellar is back, so I guess this is a non-Buffy story. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I didn't actually listen to that. I guess it's on Audible. But yeah, it seems like a very slow week. I mean, Kip posted something in our group about Hush being the potential villain of Batman Part Two or the Batman Part Two, um, which is kind of, I mean, it's kind of fitting to like the world. I mean, it is kind of like it's not the over the top Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher esque. I mean, it is more in line with Christopher Nolan's type of world. I still think that they should bring back Freeze. I think it would be like a very kind of interesting villain to bring back. Um,
yeah,
I mean, the last time we had him was this Arnold Schwarzenegger in what, 98 or something like that. It was horrible. Horrible.
he might
Um,
be by default one of the most enjoyable things about the movie, but I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Every time I watch that, which I'm ashamed to say is more than once.
I couldn't do it. Like when the Batman came out, I was like, I'm gonna watch all the Batman movies, and like I got through the Nolan trilogy because that's my favorite, and then I did the Burton ones. I was like, yeah, these are still hold up pretty well. Batman Forever was still kind of, it was like was teetering, and then I got to Batman and Robin, and I got literally 20 minutes into it, and I was like, I can't do this with a straight face. I can't.
You don't need to do it with a straight face.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
was just,
possible with a straight
yeah.
face.
I was just like, okay, and then like I know the exact because he pulls out the Batman Express card,
Never
and I
leave the
was like,
cave without it.
yeah, I was like, oh my God, okay, I can't. So I turned
Yeah.
it off. I had to. Um, but I mean, that's literally that's the news. That is the news. Okay, so let's dive into this. I mean, because it's a whole season of like hour-long episodes stuff.
Yep.
So obviously this is Ahsoka. She is Anakin Skywalker's Padawan that has been this takes place in between Mandalorian season 2 and 3, I believe. I think is what I heard.
Yeah,
Um,
just about. It's yeah. Go ahead. I'm like already ready.
no, you're fine. I I mean, if you know, like, do you know when it takes place? So I thought
Yes.
I wasn't for sure.
So it is I think about I think it runs parallel to Mandalorian season three.
Oh,
And bookends with not technically bookends, but it runs through the last scene from Star Wars Rebels and runs past the end of Mandalorian season three.
okay.
Which, if that sounds spoilery to anybody, it's not terribly consequential. But that information is there's one mention to season three of Mandalorian in second to last or last episode. I think it's the last episode where they kind of drop something that happened. And that's why it's like, okay, well, at least it happens. It could be even after season three,
Oh,
I suppose, but it would seem
oh,
weird
that's
if it wasn't brought up before. Uh,
yeah.
so
Oh, yeah. Okay. Um, so yeah, we'll keep this kind of spoiler free for a while until like we can't
we
avoid it.
can't anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, now I remember what you're talking about. So yeah, okay. I thought it was in between 2 and 3, but yeah, that makes more sense. Okay. So Ahsoka is on the hunt to stop people trying to bring Thrawn back, Grand Admiral Thrawn back to the from wherever he's hiding. And so she's on a quest. And yeah, I guess so. This is going to be very because this, we'll be honest, like this was very rushed together in the last minute. So I wasn't really kind of prepared to like talk about this. So,
That's okay.
um,
I do nothing but prepare to talk about stuff like this.
nice. Okay. And maybe I should have had you guide this. Do you want to guide this? Yes, do that.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
So yeah. Canonically, Ahsoka follows pretty much the events of Star Wars Rebels. I would say that is the critical canon going into this. You get some original trilogy in there, and you get some Clone Wars in there, and you get a couple of nods of the New Era stuff. Um, and yeah, like you said, it is all about just Ahsoka's pretty much journey to stop other people from bringing back a character named Grand Admiral Thrawn, who appeared in the Star Wars Rebels animated series, as well as some very famous books that were published, decanonized, and rewritten in the new canon because they're genuinely the best stuff Star Wars Legends has had to offer.
Yeah.
Um,
Facts.
so Disney realizing maybe don't take everything hard. I'll get into the thoughts later. So
Okay.
yeah, like you said, most of it is probably is pretty much Ahsoka and Sabine Wren, who's a Mandalorian. She's there as well, without saying too much about character arcs and stuff. This is going to be hard to talk about without spoilers, isn't it? So yeah, episode to episode, that's pretty much it. I guess where else this places to is that while this is its own thing, this is either culminating in I don't know if it's going to be renewed for season two or not. It was referred to as the series finale. So I think it's the film is going to be capping this Boba Fett and Mandalorian season 3 or 4, depending on how much self-restraint Disney Plus shows. Which will
Well,
be Dave Filoni's movie.
yeah. I
Uh,
think there will probably be some some cap on that because I know that um what's his face? CEO of Disney.
Kennedy. Wait, bigger
No.
Disney. I think you meant Star
Yeah.
Wars. Yeah,
No.
him.
Bigger Disney. Bob
Iger. Yeah.
yeah, Bob Iger. Yeah.
I got his last name. You got his first name as long as
Yes. He did say that he was going to try and cap some of the stuff that they were like going way too.
yeah.
There's way too
Which would
much
be
of it.
good because as messy as I think Mandalorian season 3 was, I like the way it ended. So I
Yeah.
think it's a nice little wrap up. And I think this ends in a way that will. I'm already getting just. So, what do you think of the show overall?
We'll talk about spoilers later.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, okay. Do you want to go episode by episode, or do you just want to like go like full?
Let's just go into it. I think if we talk episode by episode, we will have to talk about spoilers.
Okay,
But I think when we talk about spoilers, we can't help but talk about some specific episodes.
right.
So let's just go through some overall thoughts of the series as a whole,
Okay,
which I think is where every nitpick I have is going to be.
okay.
And then once we get into spoilers, I'll probably say nothing negative anymore. Do we
Cool.
go first? Do you want to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. I really liked it. Uh, so my main thoughts about the show were, if I weren't a nerd, I'd probably not like this at all and be very, very confused. And as I'd love to be objective about that. It's really hard to be objective when you have done the homework
Yeah,
and now you're acing the test.
right.
Not to say Star Wars is homework, but it's like if Star Wars is a chore, then I've done it over and over again. I've watched Clone Wars 3 times through and Rebels, I think 3 times through, and I love all of it overall. And so I was like really ready for this. And Dave Filoni, who's executive producer, director of 5 of the episodes, writer of he's probably written at least part of every episode.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. Sometimes when we talk about TV, I keep forgetting how TV works because I don't know how TV works sometimes. But let's just say he's one of the writers on the show.
yes.
Essentially showrunner, also helmed Clone Wars and Rebels. So
Mhm.
this is pretty much his Rebels season 5. And if you haven't seen those things, you might go into this and get a very sour taste of, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who these people are. I'm having trouble forming attachments. And then, oh, here's more people I don't know. I don't know why I care about any of this. And that's totally understandable. But you are
Yeah,
also behind because you're not watching the show with your kids. Or if you don't have kids, you're young enough to have watched those things. So,
yeah,
no, I mean, I really liked it, though. I think it was really good. I think I really liked the overall narrative. I think it works. It's functional. I didn't have any major problems with it. You can kind of tell halfway through, like pretty much how the rest is going to go and how it's going to wrap up. And I think there's a general lack of like major plot twists and turns. I don't think that's a problem. Star Wars has typically had those twists and turns, though. Even dare I say, like the sequels, all 3 of them had this. The latter 2 of the sequels had their share of surprises.
hmm
And so there's occasion where it's like, okay, I've seen enough Star Wars to know pretty much how this is going to go. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Safe is where you want to be with Star Wars sometimes. Otherwise, you'll get fans. And you don't want to mess with the fans.
yeah, right.
And
Pitchforks.
yeah, and I like how this is like if you're going to play like if you're going to really target nerds who know what they're talking about, then don't upset them.
Yeah, right.
And I totally get that. I think my biggest gripe with the show really goes away early on. I don't think the show's well paced, and that's always a complaint I have going into it the first time. And then when I rewatch it, that complaint goes away. But I also don't think it's well paced because early on, a lot of characters they talk kind of like this. And I just want them to talk faster. And I'm like, I don't get the choice. And it feels like, honestly, it feels like there's a lot of wasted time early on. And it's like, it's fine, but like, there's like little minutes here and there where it's like, and there's an entire episode that's like about 30 minutes long. And I'm like, you could fit this episode into another episode if you shave down time between the first three and
Yeah.
I just feel like there was a lot of wasted space. There's one scene where it's like Ahsoka and Sabine, and I won't say the context of the scene, but she's like, "Hey, we're cool on this issue, right? This is how we see this." And then they're like, "Yeah." And then 5 minutes later, she's like, "So we're the same. We're on the same page about this issue, right? Okay, you understand?" And I'm like, "You had this conversation outside." So it just feels like there's a couple moments like that where I'm just like, you could just feel them spinning their wheels a little bit, and I don't think it's necessary. If Mandalorian showed us anything, the runtime of your episodes don't necessarily determine the quality of your episodes.
Right.
Get through what you need to get through, and if you have time to put extra stuff in, great. Because the extra stuff,
Yeah.
and so I'll say, and then I'll hand it over to you because I
Okay.
can just talk about this. Um,
Yeah.
it feels like Star Wars, and it's just great.
Yeah.
There's a lot in here that feels like Star Wars. Uh, so I gave it. I'm just going into my rating before we get into spoilers. I think a solid 8 out of 10. It's super biased, like, but I am biased. I can't take that bias away. There's even something that happens near the end that's from one of the more obscure Legends books, and I have read that book, and so I've seen the internet say like, "Oh, this is silly," and I'm like, you know what? It's great. So we'll talk about that.
Okay. I was like, I've read a lot of them, so we'll have to talk about that later.
You might have read this one. When I say obscure, I guess it's like it's not people don't like to talk about it in canon. Well, now it's legends, but like it's just kind of a weird one. So
huh. Okay. Um, yeah, I will agree that the series did have a lot of pacing issues, and I think that this is this is where my biased and unbiased opinion is going to clash, because it's just like I liked as a whole. I'm just going to say that I liked the show as a whole. And I will just say my rating is probably, yeah, I agree with an 8. Like I there was a lot of good stuff here, especially in the middle of the series, that we'll talk about like later. But when it comes to my unbiased opinion, I just found that like for a show that is named after a character, that character doesn't seem to be in the show very much. And I'm like, hmm, could we just not have said this was like Rebels potentially, um,
yeah,
without one character that we'll talk about later? But that's where my unbiased. I think that's my only, like, one of my only problems with the show is that like she, like, for a show that is named after her, she's not really in it all that much. Like there's a whole episode where she's just kind of gone. Like you don't really see her. And we're like, okay. Until like what, like 10 minutes towards the end of the show or the
yeah,
one
pretty much.
episode. And then as far as like specific characters, you introduced 2 characters that are supposed to be like the mysterious characters. Well, 3 characters in fact, and one like gets disappears pretty quickly, and you're like, okay, well, that was weird. And then like the 2 other ones that you introduced, it was just like they had this kind of like mysterious aura around them, and you kind of wanted to like. I thought that the show would kind of like pick at that, and then it's just like, okay, are we going to save this for like comic books, or are we going to save this for video games? What are we
Mm.
going to do this? And then like you kind of get through this whole season, and the one character just kind of like dips out, and I was like, okay, um, it was just kind of that was character wise, it was just kind of all over the place. I loved Nicholson as Thrawn. I loved him as the voice of Thrawn during Rebels. I thought he did a really good job here. It didn't really like feel like he missed kind of like any type of beat or anything. Um, I I always liked Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. I thought that she brings essence to that character that like a lot of people can't. And I think that comes from her being like such a huge fan of the character. And I think that helps a lot. And I think that the other actors that they picked for these live action versions of the Rebel characters, I think did really well. If if I had any type of weak link to any of this, I think it would be oh, what's her face? Mary Elizabeth Winstead? Winstead?
You criminal.
I mean, because it's just but I think that's only the lack of her screen time though, is
Yeah.
because she's like walking from one place to the other, and there is one episode that she is doing her hair thing, and it's good, but it's just like I think because of the lack of screen time, she's just very just kind of there. And
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm sure that all that Twi'lek makeup and stuff and prosthetics took forever to put on. For her to be in a show that was 8 episodes, you could probably combine her into one. And that was, I mean, and I say wink link, it's just that was it. I liked Natasha Liu, I'm not even trying to butcher her last name, but she did Greatest of Being. Genevieve O'Reilly always is great as Mon Mothma. And I did like the little kind of winks and nods towards the original trilogy. I mean, because like you said, this definitely is Star Wars. This felt more Star Wars original trilogy than even, as dare I say, The Mandalorian, because that more feels like a spaghetti western, which is I think is what
Yeah.
they were aiming for. But I mean, like this feels Star Warsy. But I just wish that maybe they just didn't call it Ahsoka because it wasn't like she was not really in it.
Yeah. Have I pitched my master fix for all of these shows to you?
No,
Just do them all together and call it Tales from the Outer Rim, and just have the season be one thing, and a different season be one thing, and a different season be one thing, and occasionally you can spend a season and just cut back and forth to something else that's happening, like Boba Fett and Mandalorian, and just overlap stuff. And will audiences be confused? Sure. And you know what? Who cares? And then you could just run a couple seasons of this show instead of like 5 different shows that are constantly meeting
like
each other. And
right, like Fargo.
you want to have an episode with, yes, exactly. And I'm like, hey, you want to have an episode with Luke? You can have an episode with Luke. You don't have to take your Boba Fett Mandalorian episode and questionably be about Luke the whole time. You can just do it. And then we'll be
Right,
like, oh yeah, we saw him earlier a couple episodes ago at the end of last season because that's when that would go.
right.
And then you can just do other things. You can have arcs. It works in I don't know, most television shows. So
You think?
yeah,
But yeah,
it will be like, yeah, yeah.
so I just and I agree with you though. It's like this show is definitely for fans that have watched Ahsoka grow up. You know what I mean? And I does it hinder it for like you said, like regular like viewers of this show? Oh yeah, definitely. Because like take Alex for example. We're not talking badly about you, Alex, I promise. It's just that he
Alex, you're a
literally
loser for not having watched all this stuff.
I didn't want
I'm
to say it
sorry.
out loud.
It's a lot. It's like 8 seasons of stuff to catch up on just in Clone Wars.
Right. And that's my problem with it. It's like my other like small little incy bitsy problem with the show is because like even Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy came out and was like, do you need to watch Rebels to get what's going on in this? And they're like, no. Yes. Yes, you do. Because even I was like, I had like moments where I was like, did this happen in Rebels? And you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
especially towards the back end of this series, if that's what it is, your season or whatever. Towards the back end of it is just kind of like, oh yeah,
Yeah. And what's funny too is like every once in a while we get what I think is genuinely good exposition from Balin and Shin. But that's it. Everything else is really not, it's just so, I mean, it's good writing. It's very casually delivered because that's how the characters would do it. But I mean, like you're dealing with Ahsoka from 2 shows and Sabine from 1 show and Thrawn from 1 show and the woman from Mandalorian. All these characters exist already, so they're not gonna spoon feed each other worth of exposition about. I mean, this is not a spoiler, but like, because you get it really early on. But like early on, they were just like, "Hey, yeah, we have to. What if we can save Ezra?" And I'm like I know who Ezra is, but who's Ezra? Like
Yeah,
they
right.
don't, nobody else knows this. And then the whole show is treated like that until finally, like 5 episodes in, Shin's like, "Who's Ezra?" And Balin's like, "Oh, here, let me tell you." I'm like, just
Yeah,
put that somewhere else.
we're gonna reshuffle this.
Because I really liked. In fact, I'll get back to that. But those two, I think they were probably one of my favorite things about the show. Without saying
Oh
too much
yeah,
about them,
yeah,
and I liked the fact that there's these two characters who don't necessarily know everything else going on and don't have an attachment to everything else going on because some audience members can probably connect with them more. And I saw a lot of the internet being like, "Hey, these are great characters." And I'm like, not to put down the other character arcs, but yeah, they kind of are great characters.
yeah. And I just, I don't know, again, I know I'm like ragging on this show. I really did like the show. It's just, I guess it's just a lot to kind of like handle, like watching again, like Ahsoka grow up and where she's just very positive and everything. And she like, yeah, I mean, again, when going into certain episodes, like there's this whole thing about them talking about her training to be a warrior
Mhm.
and a general and stuff like that, not a peacekeeper and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay. And it's just kind of like I still maybe it's the voice acting. I don't know if it's just the way that like Rosario kind of like played her this time. I mean, great performance, but it's just like she's just kind of bummed out like
Yeah,
most of the show, and it's just like okay, like I don't remember Ahsoka being this way, and now I'm kind of like wondering what happened during like the original trilogy for her to be this way. Because even in like Rebels, there's just these shocking moments. She's like, oh my gosh, but she's always just kind of like on point with who she's always been. But now it's just
yeah,
kind of like I'm kind of bummed that this is happening.
yeah. It's kind of odd because it's like Ahsoka and Sabine are optimists, not in this show. And
Mm-mm.
I feel like you can take your time and establish those things. Use the time I said where we're just tighten up some of the dialogue and cut some extra scenes. Honestly, like I love Hera, but cut some scenes of the Hera if she's not going to do that much, and
Mm.
give us some flashbacks about like what they were doing during the Galactic Civil War, during the original trilogy, and use that to establish some change. Training flashbacks. I've started to get into some spoilers. Well, that's in the trailer, but I'm starting slowly getting there. That's in the trailer.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm like, you know what? Flashbacks are good. Flashbacks are useful. Not that they do them a ton in all of Star Wars, but there are some flashbacks. And if you want to blend the feeling of newer Star Wars with the storytelling of older Star Wars, which I think this does well,
Hmm.
there's some good flashbacks in the new trilogy. You can incorporate them. They work. So uh, I got the sense that they didn't really. I got the sense that they stretched their budget to the max um, in this season. Which if they did great. There's one digital shot where she lands and jumps and slides down a hill that looks atrocious, and I thought everything else looked great. Uh, so uncanny. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it happens,
Hmm.
and then they do it again in the recap, and I'm like, don't show that again.
It's,
um, Like it
oh
doesn't
my.
matter that she slid down a hill.
Yeah.
No, there's no significance whatsoever. But I think that's my mental justification for why we're a character short in this crew. Also, is because they just did not have the budget.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's why
Yeah,
they put him somewhere else.
yeah, they were smart. They thought that one through.
Yeah. He's not going to be
Um,
in this show, so let's pop him in this one.
yeah. Let's see what else. I mean, yeah, I think it looks great. I loved every single lightsaber fight. I sat forward like a little kid
Hmm.
again, and
Yeah.
I liked the there's a particular fight in a particular time with two particular characters, which we'll talk about spoilers, straight out of Harakiri. And I'm like, anytime you reference old samurai movies, you will remind me of original Star Wars, and it reminded me of old samurai movies. He said as if
Yeah.
he had totally watched the old samurai movies before Star Wars. But, I like to sound smart. We're film people.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and it was not prequel jump flip, and it wasn't. I mean, the original trilogy is great, and it's got some great saber fights. They have been improved upon in other installments, and this is harkened to both of those things. You know, it's
Yeah, I
fast
would
and
say
well
that.
choreographed,
Yeah,
and intense. So it's not like, really, I'm complimenting the sequel trilogy for the 15th time, apparently.
I don't
But
know
it's
why.
got some, some great sequences because you can show what you can do with a bigger budget, more time for choreographing and, training with your actors and stuff like that. Where it's not like, hey, take Sir Alec Guinness and his 25 minutes of screen time and make him put him in a sword fight. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think is good. I don't really have. Well, yeah, we'll get into those. So, um, do you have anything else general you want to talk about before we nitpick?
No, I don't think so.
All
We're
right.
going to spoilers.
Yes, let's talk
Spoilers.
spoilers.
Okay.
For everybody who, I guess the spoilers are really just us talking specifics, not spoilers. But so here's how I'm going to suggest we go through the spoilers.
Okay.
Let's talk, like you suggested just a little bit ago. Let's talk episodes 1 through 3,
Okay.
and then 4 and 5, and then 6, 7, 8. Because
Okay.
that's kind of the way it's grouped. So 1 through 3, we have pretty much meeting the crew for episode 1, and
Right.
we pick up with a lot about the remnants of the Empire. Not that that's going to go anywhere in Star Wars and stuff. Um, the existence of the Rebel Alliance and how it's kind of coexisting with the not being able to run the universe as strictly as it should, which we've gotten a lot of hints towards, and even in Andor somehow stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wait, is it Andor? Yeah, yeah, but yeah, we hinted at that in Andor. For some reason, I thought I've watched Andor once and I didn't like it that much, so I got a little confused. Not
Really?
stuff in Star Wars. Yeah, it's so boring. But anyway, it's so boring.
That's
I hate to
fair.
say it. Like I have like if I laid out. In fact, we talked about Andor. I laid out and I was like, here are all the things I liked about Andor. Da 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 da. But I was bored the whole time. It's
Yeah,
like every
that's
three
fair.
episodes, I got really into it. I think just terribly paced show. That's all. It's just poor pacing, poor choices, not enough aliens, and way too much drama. And he eats way too much cereal with his mother. Um, so stupid. Like anyway. Oh, but if we put blue
Anyway,
milk on it, it won't look like Star Wars. Shut up.
yeah.
It was okay. I like the idea of Andor, and if people want to imitate Andor with Star Wars forever, I will be more than happy to let that happen. Not that I can do anything otherwise. So,
Yeah.
episode 2, kind of a lot of in between. We get more about what happened in episode 2. We just get a lot more of the same. We learn more about the villains' plans. We have catching up with the map. Uh, Sabine's recovering. This is where a lot of the time wasting happens because it's 40 minutes and not much happens. And we learn about the design, the plans of the bad guys to use the map and the hyperspace ring and blah blah blah.
Right.
We get some cool fights in both of those. Episode 3 is just pretty much a space battle. Uh,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, I mean it's just pretty much the space battle. That's pretty much episode 3. Uh, not that I minded, but maybe that's one you could lug in with another episode or something. Uh, so thoughts on the first little arc?
Um. So like I said, the introduction of Balin and Shin, like you said earlier, I think was done really well. I liked their introduction, and it was a little wink and nod to the beginning of episode 4,
Yeah,
or New Hope. I
that's the
and
one we
I
got.
honestly thought that when I seen the trailer, I was like, are they time traveling? Why are they
Yeah,
on a Carillion or and
Colleen Corbett. Yeah.
Alderanian? I guess is how
Oh
you
yeah, I guess
pronounce
this
it.
was like a cruiser or something, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Um, but yeah, like I just and like reintroducing the characters and stuff, and I this is why like I say that like yes, please watch Rebels before you watch this because there is something that happens in the original trilogy that changes some of these characters, and it's like you said, like and I don't know if it's because of what happens at the last season of Rebels or whatever, but it is like Sabine. The Sabine's character is a little changed, where she's a little bit more reckless than what she is in the animated series and stuff. And so for me, it took a little bit of adjusting to get not back used to, but just getting used to how they're portraying these characters now.
Yeah.
And I do like I really wish that we get like some sort of like, I don't know, this is really bad to say, but it's just like that Lion King 1.5, where you see these characters kind of like come in between like some of these events during the original trilogy, like maybe Sabine's on Bespin and
I
something
want that
happened.
so badly now. Just a little Tales of the Jedi, but it's like Rebels 1.5.
Yeah,
We get the different little cameos, but like from their perspective, where it's like we hear her being called up in the hangar bay in Rogue One, and we go just cut over there for a minute and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. So it's just like that's what I
And
want now, is just
yeah,
be like, okay, like what happened during these like 5 year span? Because this takes place like 8 years after Yevon, right? I think that's what the
um,
official 8 or 9. I read that
yeah, I
somewhere.
think
Where it was
so
like,
because of all the other shows take place in the following years too. Yeah, so I think
yeah,
it's like that.
okay. So, but yeah, there's like that time gap where you have to like we start to get used to, like Hera doesn't change. I think that's the one that constant that was just like, okay, this is Hera. Like she's a mother now, and she is a little bit more like motherly towards whatever is going on to her friends or whatever. But I think she kind of like her character did kind of stay the same. Whereas like Sabine is a little bit more reckless. She's a little bit more like F this, like I'm not gonna do whatever. And then like I said, like Ahsoka's a little bit bummed out. And she's a little bit more um I don't know, pessimistic on things.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, I did like the fight scenes, the choreographed lightsaber scenes were amazing. I liked I think that episode 3 started to like push it into like Star Wars, where like you said, like it's space battles and like it's dog fights and stuff, and then the fight on the everything that's going on the planet's surface and stuff like that. And it's just, I think that's where to me, where the show really started to take off was in episode 3.
yeah, I totally agree. I think there were also a couple great things. Um, David Tennant is Young, the droid. I mean, every droid in Star Wars always just kills it, I guess.
Yeah,
Hilarious. And Chopper's in a little bit, but just a complete scene stealer when he is, because of course.
yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it definitely starts to come together once they get there, and we're. It's not like it's weird to say like a grand total of maybe an hour and 10 minutes of screen time feels like it's dragging its feet, but it feels like uh maybe the time could have just spent better spent just getting to know, like you said, like a little bit like all of the Lion King 1.5 of like at least for me, and help fill us in, and also let some new viewers establish who these characters are a little bit and what drives them.
right.
I don't mind getting stabbed through the stomach as long as it is clear that it is off to the side, which this was. The internet is wrong, but all the other times they're kind of right. So if this has to be lumped in, I agree. But
Poor Qui-Gon.
um,
He's just got the wrong end.
yeah, yeah. I saw a funny thing that was like a biologist or biologist, like somebody who was a good medical professional essentially just got in and they were like, "Hey, here's these vital organs. Here's Qui-Gon's spine." And I was like, "Make
That's
a good
fair.
point." But yeah, no huge problems. So get to episodes 4 and 5. Episode 4, pretty much two lightsaber fights that culminate in one lightsaber fight.
Hmm.
And then, of course, episode 5, we get just the most quality Star Wars. I guess we're in heavy spoilers now. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, we get Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds in a nice little flashback retraining montage with Hayden Christensen himself.
Yes. And this is I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think this is where like I really think that like Hayden Christensen is going to turn a lot of people's opinions around of like his um interpretation of Anakin. Um Especially with this one. And then but see, this is where I think that you and I are gonna debate though, is like, is this Anakin or was this
Hmm.
the world between worlds? Because I mean, if you look at it from a certain perspective, I don't think it's Anakin. I think it's just the Force telling her what she needs to hear.
Hmm. I'm okay with either, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a funny thing that was like, if this is Anakin, why didn't Anakin go help Luke out? And I was like, Anakin doesn't know Luke. Like, Anakin met Luke and then met Luke once, and Luke tried to kill him, and then he met Luke again, and Luke saved him, and that's it. But like,
Mm.
Anakin spent like years with Ahsoka, like training her, and I was like, if this is Anakin being able to do this is through the Force, then I like the idea of like furthering his redemption and trying to make up for you know just a few mishaps um, through finishing Ahsoka's training. And if it's not, then I think the Force doing it is equally impactful because it's kind of something where she was detached from being a Jedi to the point where she's like a gray Jedi or something, where it's like kind of bringing her back to uh, the Force in a way where she can feel confident in herself and also not be terrified over the fact that her master went on a murder spree, killed a bunch of children.
Mm. So sad. See, I'm wondering if that's who Balin is. I wonder if Balin is one of those Jedi that he tried to murder. So
I really hope
I,
we find out.
yeah, I do too. I mean, I mean, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. But like, I thought he was a very interesting character. Because I think that he gives like a different perspective of Order 66 and what happens
Yeah.
afterwards. If you look at it, you have Ahsoka, and then like Order 66 happens, and then like she still is like a Jedi, and she's still a Jedi, and she still kind of like follows the ideals and stuff like that. And then you have like Cal Kestis in this the Jedi Fallen Order series, the games, and he's a survivor of Order 66, and he is on his path, like his mission to stop the Empire and do what he needs to do to stop the Empire and stop the evil. And then you have like what's her face in Obi-Wan, where she was what's her name,
Mhm.
Reva. She
Reva.
was
Yeah.
in, yeah, Reva, where she's a survivor of Order 66, and she takes a completely different path. And then you have Balin, who, I mean, if anybody that is watching this knows anything about like Star Wars lightsaber colors, his is orange, like a kind of a burnt orange, which means that he didn't bleed it well enough. His kyber crystal, so he didn't have enough hatred to make it totally red. So there has to be something there that is not, because I think they're both orange, right?
I want to say Shin's is solid red, but only because it looks really red
Okay,
and it fits the character if it is.
right.
But I also don't historically have the best eyesight as far as distinguishing colors. So I'm not
Um,
like colorblind, just
right.
every once in a while.
But I think that like his is orange, like an orange, like a dark orange. So his is not totally orange. So that's kind of like an interesting thing that they like we can take. But I mean, going back to like episode 5, I don't think that it is actually Anakin, and we'll talk about this later and why I don't think that it is Anakin. I think it is the Force, and because there's certain scenes where he's Clone Wars Anakin, and he's
Mhm.
kind of like coming up to that right like there's certain things that he says and does towards like in the middle of some of this stuff where this is the Anakin that she knows, and then she doesn't know everything that happens after that, because all she knows is that she that he turns to the dark side, and that's that. And because you live by the light side or you die by the dark side or whatever. And I think that that's why I don't think that it is Anakin. I think that it's a manifestation of the Force within her.
I don't know if I have enough evidence to debate you or not, because we've only spent we spent a little bit of time here in Rebels, and Yoda's chilling there, and I'm like, I guess it could be Yoda there, uh, and we also get like potentially time travel there in Rebels,
Oh, right.
which sounds like a stretch for audiences maybe listening to that. But again, is that really, or is that just the way people are perceiving things? It's weird.
Right.
I mean, that myth definitely implies it, but then it ends resolutely enough to say it doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily the impact it has. It's just so, but what it is was just, for me, it's just like 50 straight minutes of just beautiful nostalgia,
Yeah.
and just gorgeous. I would say it's the best looking stuff in Star Wars since, well, I was going to say Last Jedi, but then I forgot. Andor did look really good. Point, it's really good looking stuff. Really good looking stuff. Some of the shots where he's Anakin, Vader, and back, and Kevin Keener was just top notch scoring that episode. And it made me forget about how silly the whole map was early on. Something I forgot to even talk about.
Oh, yeah.
But it's Star Wars. It's just people leaving maps for no reason to stuff that they shouldn't be able to leave maps to because they don't want to be found, so they have to leave maps behind.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
So weird.
It's whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, I do agree. Like I do. It is kind of it's funny because I was like watching that episode and I was like, why don't we get this? Like, why don't we get like live action Clone Wars? I mean, yes, we're gonna have to de-age Anakin or Hayden Christensen a little bit. But I mean, like,
it looked pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, this is kind of awesome. I mean, bring Ewan McGregor back.
Yeah. And as soon as it was like, we're looking at the faces of characters we know in live action with the costumes and settings we know in animation, and it shouldn't work the way it does, but it should. And it's a props to, I think, the animation department and back in Clone Wars for saying, hey, this is, we're going to keep the costume design fairly grounded. Maybe in 20 years when the actor's wearing it.
Right.
I don't think that was the intention, but boy, does it look good on, like, that haircut looks great on Hayden Christensen. And
yeah.
Here we are, like talking about his haircut. Great stuff, great story stuff. I also like that. I like that the Inquisitor Merrick is just like some reanimated armor. Take that, internet, for theorizing things.
Yeah, this is Starkiller.
Yeah,
he's a cloud.
No way they give Starkiller no lines of dialogue and nothing to do the whole time.
Yeah,
and I'm totally good with it. Like, you know what? It's just a means to an end. It's part of Sabine's character growth is, or Sabine and Ahsoka's character growth is getting back in the swing of things, essentially. Yeah. Sabine needs to stop dropping her helmet though, because I'm pretty sure she leaves it behind and then she has it later.
Probably. I don't even know why she wears it. Like, she's the one Mandalorian, like the one Mandalorian, well, besides Bo-Katan, that like leaves her helmet, like takes her helmet off, whatever. Like, I don't.
It's statement proof. She should always wear it.
Yeah.
But and you know what? But I applaud because they didn't. Every time it's like, oh, it's a Mandalorian a helmet. Bet they have a stunt person in there, Pedro. We know he weren't on set at all during season 3.
Yeah, he was in Canada filming Last of Us.
Yep. So good. Anyway.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Anyway, oh yeah. Did I read this or something that they reference Starkiller in this episode, like in episode 5?
I read something about a reference to the name, but it was a really big stretch. So if there is a direct reference, that might be something else I've missed.
I could have swore that I read something that like he mentions that she's not the only Padawan that he's had, or something along those lines. But yeah, it was one of those like
All right. So, um, do you have anything else to talk about in these? Anything else you want to mention in these two episodes?
No,
Okay. So we
moving
get
on.
episodes 6, 7, 8. Pretty much the last act. We pick up in the other galaxy. Thrawn's back. We've got Thrawn's Star Destroyer and a bunch of troops and some Night Sisters, and Ezra's back, and then there's some little crab people and bandits and just a lot there. And that pretty
Yeah,
much rounds out the pretty much the rest of it is just them trying to stop Thrawn from leaving, essentially.
but see, this is why I think this is either there's going to be another season, or there's like something like you said, like his movie. This has to be like setting up like Filoni's movie, because there's no like my frustration with the back half of like the back half of like this series or season or whatever, because there's really kind of like no urgency. Like, yeah, okay, we got Ezra. Let's go. Like, we got like if we're gonna stop him, like we gotta go.
Yeah.
Like they kind of just kind of like float over these people, like the crab people or whatever, to protect them. And Balin shows up, and then like he kind of like dips out, and then like Shin just kind of like, what's happening? Like, are we here for this reason? No, okay, that's kind of weird. And there's just like these very vague kind of like conversations that Balin has that you just like me as the audience and even as a Star Wars nerd is just kind of like, what are we talking about? Like, can we let's focus on this. Like, this is interesting. Like, why? Like, I are we here? And then like you get like again, we'll kind of like spoil the last episode later, but it's just kind of like, oh, oh,
Oh, go for
okay.
it. Go for it. We're talking about Balin.
Oh, okay. Well, like I think this was like Filoni's way of just kind of like going back to the Mortis arc, where it was just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're back to this? Okay. Why exactly?
I want like the Balin spin-off series, which if we ever get, won't have Ray Stevenson with us, unfortunately.
Sad face.
But
But yeah, I mean that
yeah.
was like, okay, we're back to the Mortis arc. Was this what this was all about the whole time? Like, is this where he was supposed to be going? Like, and I think that that's like you have the most. Like, unfortunately, I love Ahsoka and I love Rosario Dawson, but he was literally the most exciting or the most interesting character out of this
Mhm.
whole series, because it was just like, wait, like, does he know something that we don't know that hasn't been revealed to this audience? And now this is kind of interesting. You're kind of mysterious with your orange lightsaber. Like that, yeah, let's follow this. And he just kind of like sends his like little Padawan away. He's like, no, you don't need to be part of this. Goodbye. And she's like, okay.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have something interesting that your audience finally doesn't know, which for Star Wars doesn't happen often. And then you
Right.
have a character who's great performance, and then we also like the character a lot. We're like, okay, here's a your big Sith type character, but he also is very honorable and has conversations with the other characters and delivers information that we know and we like. I like his master apprentice relationship quite a lot, and his fighting style is super interesting, and his motivations are super interesting, and it's just it's the most interesting thing that I think happened in the entire show is just this character's little arc, and we don't even know what it is yet. I think he's looking for like the origin of everything, or the Force, or the Jedi and the Force, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which sure, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Something
why
like that.
not?
I can't think of what else like the repercussions of like seeing the statues from Mortis would mean, other than like ground zero of Star Wars.
Yeah,
And we'll get some Old Republic throwbacks, and we'll have a spinoff.
which we should.
So
Wasn't that what the
for
outline is
anybody
supposed to be?
being nitpicky too, I know the Mortis stuff is supposed to be like before Old Republic, but Old Republic is like anyway. I know there's like the Higher Republic and stuff. What was your question?
Oh, I forgot.
That's okay. I'm just like I forgot the Higher Republic existed, and I was like I don't even know a lot of the modern Star Wars stuff anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's where
That's
the
right.
Alkalite is supposed to come in.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
but we'll talk. Yeah, we can talk
Yeah.
some of that stuff like coming up. Um, but yeah, like you said, like he's the most interesting. Like he becomes the most interesting character out of this, and it's not like I don't like the other characters any less or anything, but it's just like he becomes more interesting because it's like, well, you're new, and your motivations are a little mysterious. Like let's follow you for a little while, and it kind of and, like the light at the end of the tunnel was just kind of like, what is that? And then you're like fade to
Mhm.
black, and I'm like, I hate you.
Yep. I'll tell you what I think my favorite part, sarcastically, was about these episodes was me picturing Thrawn and Roman Centurion face or whatever, like organizing how cool they're gonna look when they finally get rescued. He was like, "All right, guys, we need all the everyone's got to do the standard imperial rows," and they're all like, "Oh my gosh, we've been here for 10 years," and he's like, "No, shut up, listen, this is gonna look great. We're gonna impress 4 people. Three of them we already know." Uh, and I'm like, I get he's all about like pomp and circumstance, but he's also super practical. And I thought that was maybe like the the most expected and like introduction for that character.
Yeah,
Uh, I
his
think
white suit.
similarly, yeah, I think similarly, Ezra just coming out of a tent, I was like, yeah, I kind of expected something like that too. Um, but yeah, I thought I like I don't even know the actor who plays Ezra. I don't know his name. Uh,
Oh, let's find out. Do, do,
oh gosh,
do.
Iman Esfandi. He's great.
Yes.
I like him. He's
Yes,
a
he
lot of
was.
fun. He
Yes.
when he lights up and says the force is my ally, I was like, great, great stuff. Um,
Right?
yeah. Uh, not out of thoughts, right? I can think of more thoughts about this show.
Well, I mean, I thought the callback towards Kanan was really good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were just like, why didn't he take his lightsaber back? That's kind of dumb. And then you kind of get to that point where he builds his own and it's or not his own, but like another one, which I think in some ways is kind of like I was kind of disappointed with because it's like, okay, well, Sabine gets this hand me down because he doesn't need it anymore, and he takes off and he's like, no, it's yours now. And she's like, no, this is like you built this, and like it, like all Star Wars nerds know that like this is supposed to be like some intimate like thing to build your own lightsaber to like do your thing, and he's built two now, and one's a hand me down towards Sabine, and he built another one that like a lot of people were just like, well, where did he get the kyber crystal? Well, you have the Jedi training droid with you. Do you not think that he's got like a couple in his pocket? That was just so weird. I was like, come on. But I did like the callback to Kanan, where he built his other lightsaber, and it's back to being blue because Kanan's was blue,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, so Kanan's was blue. So I like that it was a little throwback towards Kanan. Um, and what's funny about all this that we just kind of like skipped over was Jason.
Oh
The
yeah.
theories. um, I like so with Jason. Oddly, is I liked his live action version better, just because like not because it's like a really weird kind of kid show. But if you remember watching the animated, it's kind of like going a little backwards a little bit. But if you remember watching like the animated finale, that hair was like really bright green.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a little too bright green. So when they toned it down for this live action version, I was like, okay, there we go. Like we that green I can handle.
Rebels is great, but there are some strong design choices in that show.
Right.
Vader's helmet and yeah,
Oh
Thrawn's
yeah.
cheekbones,
Yeah, the lightsabers being
all
like
of
this
Yoda.
thin.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, like you said, like the actor who plays Ezra is great. Like he does bring that energy, and it does feel like he kind of like enabled like that was the character from Rebels that I remember. And it's like these other ones have been through some stuff, and it's just like, okay, what stuff have you been through? But like with Ezra, it's just it kind of feels like the same, where he's sneaking into places and he's like wearing other people's like armor to like hitch a ride places and stuff like that. So that felt more like Ezra than like the other ones. And
Yeah.
so I did like his little callbacks and stuff. to like Kanan and everything.
I do I was like, okay, we have big wolf things and we have Ezra. We have to show his force connection with animals. Don't have time for that. Oh well.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought that was kind of a bit of a bummer, especially since they like to show off force powers, and I was like, we got a few of those. We got the force push jump combo, which they do back in Rebels, right?
Hmm.
Kanan and Ezra do that, and I thought that was a well. I mean, like I don't mean to downplay any of like Sabine's character arc and using the force. I thought it was all great. I just don't think it
Hmm.
was as interesting as the stuff that was new. So I hate to say like, oh, Balin and his dead end story is more interesting than a good character arc. It's not the case. That's just something really interesting to talk about. Whereas a character arc was really good, but you know, it's Star Wars. We've seen that a couple times. So that's not a bad thing. But
Right.
I like seeing Ahsoka and her kind of like the Force investigation, which like only pops up like once or twice in all of Star Wars, right? The when she like sees the scene around the destroyed map.
Oh, so you haven't played the games.
I That's why I heard it was in the games, and
Hmm.
I know it's like in some old lore, like Quinlan Voss has it, I think, and some stuff like that.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit like Ray's memory thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I haven't played the games, but I heard that was a good nod to the games.
Yes, so yeah, in the games, because I'm actually going through Survivor right now, I've picked it back up. So with the games, yeah, it is kind of like certain objects. It is a lot like Rey, where she picks up Anakin's and she has a flash, like a flood of memories and stuff like that. So I guess J.J. Abrams had a lot more budget to do this. So but yeah,
Yeah.
it is a force, it's a force echo, and she's able to like see because it's in a, like a almost like a ghost,
Mhm.
like something tragic happens and then like it imprints onto the force in that specific time. And throughout the game, especially Jedi Survivor, you can like see them a lot and you pick them up a lot, and it kind of
That's
gives
pretty cool.
you backstory. Go ahead.
I started Fallen Order and then I stopped playing it because it was hard. I don't like hard games.
That's fair.
It's brutal.
It is brutal.
I kept losing. I kept getting shot by regular stormtroopers, and I was like, I'm no Jedi, and I quit.
You're no Jedi. um but yeah, so since we're on the last episode, this is why I don't think that was actually Anakin, because when his Force Ghost actually does appear, it's almost like he doesn't want Ahsoka to know that he is there.
Mhm.
And then maybe it is because he didn't help Luke, or maybe he doesn't feel like she needs him anymore. I don't know if it's a whole Ben Kenobi thing where he's just like, all right, I'm out. Like Luke, you kind of got this, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. So
I'll tell you what would help is some more than just 20 minutes with them in the back end of Book of Boba Fett. When it's like, oh, I guess Luke and Ahsoka met. We're gonna get into that? No? What did they talk about? Oh well.
well, yeah, I think that would be and that's why like I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm on the fence to this, and like I'm sure that you and I can make like a complete video of this, but it's just like I I wonder what the holdup is to like introduce these characters. Is it casting? Is it the AI or the de-aging or anything? Because I understand Mandalorian season two. It was a little
Mhm.
yeah, we know that that's not Mark Hamill. Um, but in like Book of Boba Fett, it was a lot better, let's say, because you spend a little bit more time with him and like with Luke and Grogu and stuff like that. But I'm like even in this one, like C-3PO makes like a little cameo appearance, and it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, where's
I'll tell you
Leia?
I'll tell you exactly what that is. It's Disney really just worried about PR backlash from replacing Carrie Fisher, because it's one thing to have Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones and Mark Hamill voicing themselves. It's another thing to not have that person around. I mean, they dealt with a whole lot just in Rogue One, and Tarkin is nowhere near the main character of Rogue One. If you bring back like
That's
a major
fair.
cast member, I think you'll get people that really just need just eased into it as slowly as possible. And I think they've done a good job, like slowly building to the idea that we will get this cameo back. And we got a digital Leia in Rise of Skywalker. It looks fantastic. The flashback Leia with her training, and I think it's going to happen. And I really hope it's in the Heir of the Empire movie or whatever they want to call it, Shadow of the Empire. I'm not saying they can, you know, want to do a different Shadow of the Empire or just put Shizor in this one. But I want that character. But anyway, different book, I know. But like, we'll just put him in it. We don't live in Hondo either. But anyway,
Yeah.
um,
I but
but
I don't know. I'm like on the like I'm literally on the fence with it because like you just said, it's not only because she's not with us anymore, but it is like okay, like this is not Carrie Fisher. Like I don't think that we've gotten to that point, and maybe this is what it is, where we haven't gotten to that point where it's just like okay, like the de-aging and like digitally masking whoever it is not the greatest. But then again, it is like okay, we had Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you introduce a young Leia, so it's like we know that these OG characters are important to the Star Wars universe, and you're like slowly dipping your toe into like with Luke Skywalker, what happens beyond Return of the Jedi with his character. And yes, we see it 30 years later in Force Awakens and the new trilogy and everything. But like that's why we had, and I use the past tense, they had Legends. We had all those books
mhm.
to kind of like appease that itch to like see what happens with these characters post Return of the Jedi. And yeah, I understand that like Carrie Fisher and Leia would be a lot harder to do, but I'm just wondering if it's like you said, if it is a PR thing or if it's a Billy Lord thing. And maybe she doesn't want
True.
her mom being flashed everywhere.
Yeah, we are getting, and we're also still in the actor strike, and you know, and this was obviously planned not to do this before the actor strike, but boy, did they luck out on not doing that during the actor strike.
Yeah, that's
When
true.
Robin Williams' daughter came out and was talking about how she would think it was terrible if he was ever redone with AI and stuff.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites Legends books is
What's that?
Death Troopers.
Oh yeah.
There's
I
just
thought that
something
was
about
canon.
well, it kind of is now because we have Stormtrooper zombies. And
Which, by the way, thank you for reminding me. Like, where did he get these Night Sisters at?
I think they live there. I think
Okay.
this is like okay, so here's what I'm piecing together. We're gonna get really nerdy for a second. You
Okay.
know the
Let's do
Yuzong
this.
the Yuzong Vong from original like expanded universe because the expanded universe got so boring and just redundant that they were like,
Yeah.
oh, what if this this people from another galaxy came and they had all biological weapons. The force was useless against them. And they looked all cool and creepy and skeletal. And it was really kind of silly, but whatever. It worked as like a new big threat to the galaxy. I think the Night Sisters, on hindsight, this is not an idea I had until Ahsoka. I think the Night Sisters are the replacement for the Yuzong Vong. Um, I think it's like, okay, well, maybe that's getting carried away. But what if we had a different aspect of the Force so isolated from the Jedi and the Sith as far as what they're comfortable with that still followed something close? And we had the Witches of Dathomir, and they didn't originate from here because the witches are kind of weird anyway. They're kind of this standout of like, this is not really the dark side. It's not the light side. They don't use lightsabers. They don't have green magic, and they resurrect zombies, and they make people weird and stuff like that. And I think that's just this thing from another universe. I think that's more of recanonizing some of Legends theory.
Let's keep
So
recanonizing some of this stuff.
yeah,
Like you said,
I
like
like
you
it.
brought up Shadow of the Empire. Let's do that. Yeah. Let's make that into a series.
Yeah, I really want. I mean, if the de aging goes well for Heir to the Empire, I want them to go back and do Shadows of the Empire post Star Wars, and I want Dash Rendar and Shizor.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
we're dreaming now.
Oh yeah,
But
completely.
this stuff was a dream like 10 years ago. These Rebels did not end 10 years ago. Whenever Rebels ended, 8, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I could just look this up easily
We
and
could.
not be guessing like I don't know when things were released.
But why would we want to do that?
2014
Rebels.
to 2017. Yeah, 6 years ago.
I got
Or no, it
2018.
would have run to 2018 because they run over Christmas break. You're right. I'm wrong. 5 years ago. The point is, 5 years ago, I didn't think we'd see live action Thrawn on Disney Plus because none of us knew what Disney Plus was. And those of us that did uh, are can see the future. I'm apparently getting tired. But my point was, I like the Death Troopers, and I think his entire crew is zombies.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Yeah, because they were like, I'm tired, and we've been
Yeah,
on this planet for way too long. And it doesn't look like there's much to eat out there. So
yeah. I think a genuine nitpick I have about the ending though, like like we were talking about stalling a lot, and you mentioned that like there's even a scene where the three of them are like, "How do we stop Thrawn in time?" And I'm like, maybe get out and run or push,
yeah,
get out of the slow pod thing. But then at the other side, Thrawn's like, "Oh, we have to finish loading these crates," and I'm like, "You have to show us what's in these crates, otherwise you just wasted so much time," and they don't. And I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's he's got a bunch of tiny star destroyers that they built, and they're going to make them all really big and stick them all in Exegol. And the one complaint I have is that there's not been a scene in any of Star Wars yet where it's some guy and ordering ships to be built on Corellia, and the guy's like, "How many ships do you want?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know, 1 million." And he's like, "And you want them at this random planet in the middle of nowhere?" He's like, "Yeah, for 30 years from now." It's like, "You gonna crew all these things? I'm working on it. Okay, I'm working on it. I've got a couple billion volunteers somewhere that we can get." Rise of Skywalker is dumb.
yay! It is dumb. Uh, wait, who
I
painted
thought
who painted all those red? By the way.
I know Palpatine over 30 years. He's like, "Sir, you have things to do." He's like, "I'm not done. Make a clone of me or something. Make a weird, get the clone guy out.
With his
He
chair.
doesn't look at all like you. I don't care. Just put him in a throne somewhere. We'll pretend he's somebody else."
Yeah, it's fine. It's
Uh,
fine.
so you have a speech to do. Oh, I'll just stream over Fortnite anyway.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I thought it was an alright finale too. Like I don't think it was a bad finale. I thought it was whelming. I think I do wish that we had just gotten to see kind of what the hiccup for Thrawn's time pressure was of getting out of there, and I think it would have made it flow a little better because we would get some stakes. Because it's like I mean, even for us who know everything, we're like, all right, Thrawn's back, okay, and we get some remnants of the Empire. Does he have like a plan? I mean, we get a little bit of that in Mandalorian, but the guy who seems to have the whole army got beaten in Mandalorian. So I'm like,
Hmm.
what's Thrawn's plan? Like the Empire wasn't there to greet him. He's got all these crates, and I kind of want to just like a little bit more of like, oh, why is this serious? We read, we know, but also we haven't been really told that. We know because we're guessing based on books that this is kind of based on.
Right.
So, and then those have been rewritten for new Star Wars lore back in the older between the movies anyway. So it's you know,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. And then I honestly really wanted to pick up next season with Ezra like on his Star Destroyer, just because that's just where Ezra feels right. It just feels right sneaking around Star Destroyers. It feels weird. He's like, I'm gonna go and just leave, and we'll go back later. And I'm like, you are in a good spot. Uh,
But I mean, even then, there was just kind of like, how did he get off this Star Destroyer?
Convenience.
All right, I'm gonna dip out. We made it to Dathomir. I'm gonna slowly kind of fade out.
Yep. I thought it was
Like,
gonna
okay,
be. I thought it was Rex showing up at the end or something, and I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be." Oh, it's Jester again.
yeah, right. It's
Like, why
just
put your helmet back on? Way the audience knows who it is.
yeah,
Just give Hera a heart attack while you're at it.
yeah. Driving around with that helmet on. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I feel like we said a lot more negative stuff than positive stuff.
I know we did, but I think that's just the basis of being a Star Wars nerd. It's just like, yeah, we love it,
It is. Yeah,
but it's crap.
it's great too.
Yeah.
I like that what's her face is like, oh, here's a cool new sword, and then they're like, also maybe stay. And then she dies. So I'm like, I think that's great. I think it's great because we had to at least get rid of one villain this season or something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
She's like, for the Empire. She's like, I'm not doing this for the Empire. I'm
Yeah.
doing this for Dathomir or whatever. Cool. Yeah.
So yeah. Well,
But yeah, I thought that she was an interesting character as well.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I think the death, like the sister, night sister twist, was interesting. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, we're bringing this back, and it is literally like I said, and again, this is really not a negative, but I think that this was meant to kind of like accumulate or what's what I'm looking for, just bringing together everything that like Dave Filoni did in Rebels, and he
mm,
introduced, and he just kind of like he did with throughout, Clone Wars and stuff like that. And he's trying to pull as some of the interesting things that he's done in those animated into live action, which is great because there was a lot of good stuff that he did reintroduce in this series that he introduced into the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff like that. And like we go back to like the Mortis arc, and it's just like a lot of things. It brings a kind of a different perspective of how the balance or the balance of the Force works and things like that. But I did notice that like her statue was destroyed. Did you notice that?
mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird. So I don't know what that means, but maybe in the movie.
Yeah. We'll find out. I'm excited to find out.
Yeah.
And I want the Star Wars crawl back. This was the closest we've had in a while, but I want the Star Wars crawl back for the movie. I understand why a show doesn't need to do a Star Wars crawl, but the movie better have a Star Wars crawl. I missed it in Solo a lot.
Yeah. It doesn't have one in Rogue One either, does it?
It doesn't, and it desperately needs one.
Yeah.
But we could talk about the creator all night. Just kidding. There's a big jump between the crawl and the creator. Rushed first act, etc. Just watch last week's for context.
Yay. Yes, please watch last week's and this week's. Um, yeah, do we have any more thoughts on Ahsoka?
I'll probably do off the top of my head.
Okay.
That was great, even though lots of problems, but it's great. You know,
Yeah,
unless you
I
don't
agree.
know everything, then it's confusing and messy.
Yeah, so you should probably
So,
like do your homework, like
yeah,
Alex.
do it. Just some YouTube summaries or something if you want. But Rebels is
Yeah.
great, and a lot of Clone Wars is really great. So
Which I thought that I told him to do, but he decided to literally watch everything.
I respect his decision.
Oh,
It's
I do
worth
too.
watching.
That's just a lot of time.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of time.
I did Clone Wars the first time. I did the whole thing in like a week. But I did
Lord.
nothing but watch Clone Wars just for a
Wow.
week. It's great.
Yeah, that would probably be great.
And see, that was only 6 seasons at the time. So
Oh yeah, because they added the seventh one.
yeah.
Um, so there is a couple things that are coming up through Star Wars. We have the Skeleton Crew, which I'm going to be honest with you, I have heard very little about. I'm assuming, I think I heard that it takes place during this same time.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, let's look it up. Skeleton Crew, upcoming live action. I'm not really sure when this is going to be dropped, but this is by John Watts, who did um, one of the Spider-Man movies, I believe,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
all of them, actually.
At least, yeah, there you go.
So
And
it is
Cop
kind
Car
of,
with Kevin Bacon.
which is a good movie if you haven't seen it. So this is with Jude Law as a Force user. That's That's too funny. So this is created by John Watts and Christopher Ford. It is coming to Disney Plus. And it says that it does take place at the same time as The Mandalorian, connecting with the events of Return of the Jedi. And what makes me kind of excited about this is that it is Amblin Entertainment style coming of age, so more E.T., Goonies, things of that nature, all things that Alex hates. So I'm just going to take shots at Alex while he's not here. So I'm excited for that. I haven't got, it says, according to Wikipedia, which knows all, ends all, says it's released in 2023. I don't see that
Not a
happening
chance.
at all. We're in October and we haven't had like at least a trailer for this. I don't think that's happening. I'm guessing early 2024. I'm going to say that's probably going to be the earliest that we see this. I am kind of excited for the Alkalite. I hope that I'm saying that right. Alkalite. Which is going to be a High Republic show that is going to be centered on to the growth of the Sith during the High Republic. I have heard that it is supposed to be more lightsabers and more lightsaber fighting, and it's supposed to be very much in the essence of like the prequel trilogy. And it's going to star Amandla Steinberg. I'm not going to butcher these names, but it's actually a good cast. Jodie Turner-Smith is going to be in it. Daphne Keane is going to be in it. Manny Jacinto is supposed to be in it. Lee Jung Jae, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's from Squid Game. He's supposed to be in it. Carrie-Anne Moss. So this is by Lena Headland. Yeah, Leslie Headland. Sorry. But that is supposed to be more Sith Jedi type of, so it's more lightsabers, more stuff like that, and it's supposed to take place 100 years before Episode 1. I've heard this was supposed to be like early 2024. If Skeleton, yeah, we're just probably going to push all this back. So I'm more excited for this than I am the Skeleton Crew. Of course, I'm excited for anything Star Wars, but I'm wanting to see some of the High Republic on live action because I have read a few of the comics, followed some of the storylines. I read the first book that came out like a couple of years ago, which is not bad. But when it's not dealing with like Sith and stuff like that, it's like sometimes, like you mentioned, like the Yuuzhan Vong, like it is like that was kind of interesting to kind of watch because it is really interesting to see that Luke built the Jedi back up and they had like the old Jedi Temple and the Jedi Academy and all this other stuff. And then you had all these new Jedi that were useless literally throughout this like 17 book series. So I did think that was kind of interesting, but this is kind of like that, but with like pirates, space pirates. So not really. It was okay, but I just kind of want to see a different perspective of the High Republic. And then of course we have like the new Rey movie that is coming out. I'm not sure like who's directing that. I know it is a female director. Look it up. I know that Dave Filoni's movie. I guess this is what it's. Ahsoka is supposed to be like the setup for that. Not really sure when that's coming out. Like I said,
I think like the territory now is like I'll see it when we see a trailer.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
some concept art in People magazine or something that always has it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, and then like James Mangold has his Old Republic. It's not even the Old Republic, is it? It's supposed to be like the beginning of the Force type of stuff. So I'm kind of like it's supposed to be like 25,000 years before Star Wars. So exciting. Exciting stuff. Is there anything out there that kind of like stands out to you that you're kind of excited about?
Not particularly. Not particularly. I'm just kind of I just wait to see what happens, and I just keep wanting Solo 2 to happen.
Oh yeah, Lando. I think Lando's turned into a movie now.
Mm,
I think I read that somewhere. Sorry. But yeah, that's yeah. I give that kid another big shot. I mean,
mm.
Alden Ehrenreich, he wasn't terrible. He dealt with what he was got. So yeah, give that kid a shot. He could be Han Solo in the new Mandalorian series.
Totally.
Sure, it could happen. All right. Well, if that's it, I mean,
Just
yeah.
get him and the little girl from Kenobi and just age him up a lot.
Put her on stilts or something so that she's like some sort to hike with him.
Just a DH Harrison Ford and DH Mark Hamill and her on stilts and Alden Ehrenreich just looking the same.
Totally passable. It's
Yep.
totally passable. All right.
He'll still be better than Rise of Skywalker.
Definitely. Definitely. Awkward, but still better. All right. So that's our season review of Ahsoka. Hopefully this week we'll get Alex back on here and we'll do most anticipated of what's coming out to the next most anticipated movies that are coming up for the rest of the year of 2023. But until then, we'll see you guys later.